Hi, I'm Mr. Miyagi, and this is Mr. Miyagi's workshop. Well, we've got the old 73 here on the bench. Now, if you remember a few episodes way back, we built a new motor. Now, this thing's never been ran, so when I changed out the motor out of the 73, I put this one in. And we just rebuilt the carburetors. So, this is a good time to see if it's going to start. Let's see what's going on here. Now I'm going to kickstart this thing and hopefully it'll go. Turn some fuel on here a little bit. Chokes. Some ignition. It runs. Now I don't know if you noticed on the vacuum gauge there that both were running pretty darn close, and that was what we set back when we did the carburetors using setting those butterflies with pieces of welding rod so you could match them up. So it will get you darn close there. I just did a final adjustment on it to smooth it out just a little bit more. But I'm pretty happy with this. It does run fine. Now what I'm going to let it do is I'm going to let it go completely cold, and I'll start it up 2 more times like that and warm it up. And what that will do is help see all these gaskets and everything in place. Plus I want to walk through and make sure that I've gotten everything tightened up on here. For some reason my electric start's not working. Probably the wire to the solenoid is not hooked up or something, I don't know. But I mean, it kick starts and it fired up there, what, on the 4th, 5th kick there? I'm happy with that. We'll get into tuning the carburetors after I do the two more initial startups and shut down, let it cool down. And then I'll show you how to dial in carbs and check your timing. So I've been asked where's the best place to start off with these electronic ignitions for timing, and where I think the best, and it's worked for me, is where this little area comes out to a point and the little point on your base. So on your point base housing, you'd want to use, here we go here, this little point right there to match up with your base plate point. And I think that'll put you darn close, because I put this on there and I was right on for timing when I fired this thing up. You can do the same, I expect, with Mike's XS style. This one right here, where you line this point up, that point right there, with that point on there. Now I have not used these yet, so I don't know for sure, but I think that would give you a basic starting area. And if you still had a points ignition, what I would do is I would line this up, the center of this notch area, line that center of the notch up with the center of that screw. and then you could adjust that back and forth. The way that fits in the point space housing, so that's kind of what I'm talking about right there. You just line this up straight in there, and then that way you can play with your timing a little bit, because this notch on the plate and the notch on the housing is where you put your screwdriver to twist it back and forth. I hope this clarifies the startup sequence of where you put that plate at to make sure the bike will fire up. We're at this stage here with adjusting the carburetors to get the flow in the carburetors exactly the same. Using a vacuum gauge works excellent, but also, you remember when I showed you where we use the rod, so that you're adjusting these at this point right here, in or out, so that you're matching each side those butterflies that have the same flow. So basically what we have is that you have an airflow coming through here on both sides with a fuel mixture, and you're trying to get those both butterflies exactly the same. Well, you can get darn close by using with a piece of rod the same size on both sides there, and that's how you balance out the carburetors. And that's what we're doing up here. We're using the vacuum gauges to actually balance the flow. A little bit more pricier than a couple of pieces of rod. You can even use 1/8 inch 2/8 inch drill bits would work fine too. I don't know if you've ever heard of the dead cylinder adjustment, and it's an easy way to get your pilot screw, which is usually located up here at the tail end of the carburetor. Adjusting that in and out sets your fuel air mixture at an idle. Especially if you're using the electronic ignition, you don't want to run without the spark plug hooked up. Well, there's a way around that. What you can do is you can take a spark plug, put a little clamp around it, and then ground it off to the engine. Now when you fire that up, you're going to be running and it'll still be sparking here and everything. It's not going to affect electronic ignition that way. And that way you can adjust the opposite side while it's running on your adjustment here on the pilot screw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm this engine up, and we'll go through the steps of doing the vacuum gauge and the dead cylinder adjustment. Now these are in sync, but we'll adjust them a little bit. Notice that needle drop. I will screw it back out. You're basically leveling those things out there now. It's kind of nice to have this little guy here. Okay, now we're going to do a dead cylinder adjustment. I'm going to go hook this up on the other side here, and then we'll go back and readjust this one again. So one thing you also want to do is you want to make sure that you run your idle up a little bit, because you're only running on one cylinder. So here again, we're going to adjust this. There it's dying. You want to back it back out. It's running smooth. You backed it out 3/4 of a turn from the base. And then you can do the other side. Since I've already done both sides already, I'm not going to go through it again, but we can go check timing here in a little bit. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to check timing on this. Notice I've got my marks. It's the top dead center mark, and then that's where it's going to line up at if it's on time and everything. So one of the things I like to do here is I like to run an extra battery. I have another battery, and then we're going to put this on our spark plug wire for reading it. Now on some of these there's an arrow, and that points towards the engine or to the spark plug. That goes on there. So let me start this up. Okay, Okay, I got my idle turned down. So we hit this. And there it is. Right on mark. Now if you needed to adjust that, all you would do is loosen off these screws here on either side and move that plate one way or another. But like I mentioned earlier, lining those two tips up, those two marks there, always seems to come in darn close. Pretty good. Let me turn this off. So if you want to do those dead cylinder adjustments, you want a spark plug with a little hose clamp on it, a place that you can attach a wire to, and a ground out wire so you can ground to the frame. Something else that you might need, and it's always handy, you don't need the expensive timing light. If you have one of these triggers, there's sometimes be an indicating arrow, and that points to the spark plug when you put that on your wire. So in other words, if you were to do this, this would go, the arrow would be pointing that way. One of the most important tools is the screwdriver for adjusting these ones, these nice small ones and stuff. If you can find one of these are great for doing, if you've got the vacuum gauges, for adjusting and balancing out your carbs. Not necessary. You can get down in there with a longer screwdriver. I've done it with these guys before, where I've stuck them down in there and did a little bit of adjustment. But just some of the components that might make your life a little easier. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in my comment section below, or you can send them to my email at tmiyagi@hotmail.com. And if you've liked this episode on tuning and rebuilding in carburetors, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget that ringy-dingy button for the next episode coming up. Gosh knows what we're going to do. Who knows? So anyway, this is Mr. Miyagi, hoping to see you on the road, and you all be safe out there. So, ciao.